The object I chose to discuss is a painting, St. Margaret Holding the Cross. It's attributed to Ugolino di Siena from Italy, and it was painted in around 1330 in tempera on wood. The painting depicts a woman standing upright, holding a thin red cross in her right hand, and a solid gold background engulfs her. With her head tilting slightly to her right, she stares out at the work. A white scarf wraps around the top of her head and runs down the front of her body. She is covered with an open ultramarine cape with a cross pattern on it. Above her head there are two engraved halos. In the center of them there's a light floral-like pattern, and also there's an arching frame that rounds the top of the work. The first time I saw this work was during a visit to the European Gallery on a free night for the Portland Art Museum, and on top of that there was a work by Titian that too was on display in the room. So I walked into this large rectangular room with high red walls, and the space was just packed with people waiting in a line or walking around talking. And in the middle of all this sort of chaos, I noticed Ugolino's St. Margaret. It was like a calmness in the midst of this bustling room. It captivated me with its simple nature, yet this engaging gaze of the saint. As I became more invested through research into the smaller details like punchwork and the arching molding, I learned how this was not just another altarpiece in a larger set, but it exemplified the style of the Sienese school. However, as time went on, I grew frustrated because different scholars have proposed the main subject as two different saints. One says it's St. Margaret of Antioch, another says it's St. Margaret of Cortona, and I tend to side with those who think this to be St. Margaret of Cortona due to the strong ties between the monastic communities in Cortona and Siena and the patronage that came from them. But in the end, I never found any clear answers. So my driving question in all this was to find out, who is this saint? But the frustration I ended up feeling here showed me how I and others really rely on the scholarship that already exists for works of art. In reality, scholarship changes continuously. We can't take everything as set in stone when we read it. And more broadly, art is meant to touch different people in different ways. So just because we think or feel something different than what might be in a textbook or on a wall plaque, it doesn't necessarily mean we're wrong. To research our new ideas is what really leads to new scholarship about art. So basically, I learned that my personal interpretation might not be so crazy in the end.